has to go. But a national banking system has been a sore spot in this country ever since it began. Washington and Madison were for it. Jackson and Jefferson were against it.
Right.
What would the national banking system look like if we get rid of the Federal Reserve?
First off, you can't close the Federal Reserve down in one day because it would be more chaotic than what we have now. But if you don't do anything, it'll dissipate, it'll self-destruct, and we don't want that to happen. So my plan would be to legalize the Constitution. And, a really strange idea here. The Federal Reserve System is not a constitutional system. And you're absolutely right. Jefferson and Jackson got rid of the national banking system. We should aim for that. But I would do it by introducing a parallel currency. And this would be a sort of a newer notion about what the Constitution started with. The Constitution, especially the Coinage Act of 1792, authorized bimetallism, and that was not a good idea. You should, if you're going to have gold and silver, they should vary by the market. But if you had a gold standard or a silver standard, or what the market would pick, I'd like the market to help pick it. But what we need to do, just to move away from what we have, is to make sure that gold and silver as legal tender was permissible. Right today, it isn't. There's too many prohibitions. First, if you want to go and buy gold coins to circulate, you have to pay sales taxes. If your gold coin goes up in value because the dollar goes down in value, they say your gold went from $700 to $800, you have to pay a capital gains tax. You shouldn't have to pay capital gains taxes on money. And then if there's a contract in gold and there's a settlement in court, then they settle in Federal Reserve notes, not in ounces of gold. So what you want to do is change those laws to legalize and let people drift over. So if you're deciding, well, I'm going to save for my kids' college education, okay, would you buy a 20-year government bond and put it away and think that would protect you, and 20 years from now it would have value? No, if you had $20,000, it would probably be worth about $5,000, if that much. But if you put it in a 20-year gold bond, earn a little interest, in Federal Reserve notes, it's going to go up like this and probably do better, at least as well as the cost of the education. So that should be legal and readily available, and with the electronic technology, it would be easy. Currencies trade on international exchange markets all the time. So it would be introducing the idea of a private banking system in parallel, and then you would just have to wait and see, rather than saying, tomorrow we close this down and you have a new system in place. It wouldn't be feasible to do that.
Get rid of debt money.
Pardon me?
Get rid of debt money.
Debt money. That's right. This is our and debt money and the whole idea of fractional reserve banking is fraud. So you could that would be a responsibility of government to regulate and deal with that. Today, debt is money, and it becomes an asset, and the reserves against your currency is debt. So it makes no sense.
Opinion on NAFTA, the Mexican trucking, and National Union?
I'm opposed to the UN, the WTO, the IMF, the World Bank, NAFTA, CAFTA. I'm for individual sovereignty and state sovereignty, and I like national sovereignty to a limited degree because we have to have borders and all. So no, we have border guards in Iraq. They don't need to be in Iraq, they need to be on our borders. So by bringing our troops home, which is my position, not only from Iraq, but I'd bring them home from around the world. Our empire is bankrupting this country, so we would have personnel and the finances to deal with our borders. But no, I'm absolutely opposed to the North American Union, the idea that we might have an Amero, the NAFTA highway, all those things would change. Fortunately, the American people have sent a message to Washington. The people have awakened sooner than the Congress has awakened on some of these issues, and we've had a couple votes now, and there's been, some resistance to it. But you know how sometimes these things work behind the scenes, and they get passed and they get buried in legislation. That's why we have to have somebody in the administration branch that would be looking out for us.
Sir,
So you say out of Iraq, I'm not arguing or anything, but my question to you is, you say out of Iraq you still want to defend our borders. How is it you propose you will do that? I'm fine that you want to. How are you going to make sure we're safe without being over there?
Well, I think us being over there makes us less safe. That's my position, because the real experts on this, the one that I consider the super expert is Michael Schur, who was a CIA agent for many, many years, and his role was to run the Osama bin Laden unit, and his job was to get inside the mind of Osama bin Laden. And he's convinced me that the principle of blowback is very, very real. So the more we're in their face, the more likely is that they're going to come over here. Also, Robert Pape has written about this very clearly, and his book is called Dying to Win. And he has studied all the suicide terrorism over a 10-year period. And it isn't radical Islam that does it. That's part of it. But the country that has the most suicide terrorism happens to be Sri Lanka, and they're Hindus. So the prevailing reason why people are willing to go to that extreme is the frustration because their governments won't do anything, and they're frustrated and annoyed, and they have convictions. It's occupation, and all we have to do is think about how we would react if we were occupied by the Chinese. We'd be shooting and doing all those kind of things. So we did exactly the wrong thing after 9/11. We've now occupied 2 new countries, and now we are more endangered. So just even moving the troops back a ways won't solve the problem, because they're still annoyed because we have troops all around the region. We're getting ready to attack Iran. So just by coming home and not having this attitude, it's our oil, we're going to take our oil, and we're going to have puppet governments over there. We've been doing it since 1953. We overthrew the first Iranian government in 1953 and put in the Shah, who was a militant dictator. And they remember these things, but most Americans don't even remember it. So it goes on and on. Non-intervention is what the founders taught. The Constitution dictates. We are much safer without that incentive. At the same time, then we have to use that personnel and the funds to have better border patrol. I mean, we should have more security, because we won't be perfectly safe overnight. But I think we are less safe now than we were before 9/11, because we are so much more involved overseas and really antagonizing our very enemies.